Welcome back in here to Live Now from Fox. I'm Andy Mack. Let's shift gears a little bit to a major trial taking place in Florida, and in somewhat of a surprising move, defendant Sarah Boone taking the stand in this second-degree murder trial dating back to when she is accused in the death of her boyfriend, Jorge Torres. Prosecutors allege that Boone zipped her boyfriend inside of a suitcase during a drunken game of hide-and-seek at their Winter Park home, taunted him, and then went to bed, leaving him dead inside. I do want to put up just this live picture right now out of Orlando, Florida, in that area, as we were watching some of the testimony earlier on today of Sarah Boone to making the decision to take the stand. Let's take you right now out to our Fox 35 team to give you some key moments of what we learned today.
I zipped him up. We thought it was funny.
Taking the stand in her own defense.
I moved the suitcase around a couple of times, just kind of on the wheels, and moved it around. And at that point, it was funny. We were joking and laughing about it.
Sarah Boone spoke for hours under oath about the death of her boyfriend in 2020.
Knew the tone, and we ended up, I guess, arguing back and forth with one another, and it was the things that he was saying very much frightened me.
She's accused of zipping Jorge Torres up in a suitcase and leaving him to die. Boone described what happened leading up to his death. She said they went from laughing to arguing while he was inside the suitcase.
My fear was that he was going to break out of the suitcase, knowing that it was a broken suitcase.
Claiming Torres was abusive toward her, and she was scared.
For everything you've done to me.
I shook the suitcase, trying to get his hand to go back in, shaking it, and telling him that, please stop doing this. Please stop doing this to me. He would have made me unrecognizable, or I would have lost my life.
And then she grabbed her son's baseball bat.
I kind of pushed, like I held it with the skinny part here, and then
so the grip here.
Prodded at it, yes.
Boone went on to say she went to bed with Torres still zipped in the suitcase. Boone's testimony today setting up the rest of the defense's case, saying she was a battered spouse and she killed Torres in self-defense.
When he was in the suitcase, he was threatening her, threatening you. Can you tell the jury what he was saying?
I don't know. Am I allowed to curse?
Yes.
But he was going to end me.
If she let him out of the suitcase, she was going to be harmed. Based on him trying to get out with his hand, based on the threats he made while he had his hand out, and based on the threats he made while he had his hand inside just before she went upstairs.
All right, some interesting details, and let's bring into the conversation right now criminal defense attorney Matt Tympanick. Thank you so much for joining us here on Live and Now from Fox to detail some of what we learned today as Sarah Boone taking the stand in this trial. And like you have mentioned, they, quote, I thought it was funny, could be the ultimate decider for the jury. What did we make of what we learned and what we heard from Sarah today?
What happened with the defendant is that she told two conflicting different stories. On one angle, she's trying to say that she's a battered spouse syndrome, battered woman syndrome. She was acting in self-defense. But also she's telling the jury, we thought it was funny. We thought it was funny to put somebody in a suitcase, lock them in there, and when they scream to try to get out, keep them in there. That doesn't really compute. And unfortunately, the jury is going to be saying to themselves, like, how are you, this individual, you are allowed to use lethal force when you believe that your life is in imminent harm of grievous bodily injury or death? This individual was neither, and I just don't think the jury is going to buy this.
Yeah, and so some of the demeanor of her might weigh on some of these juries' minds. How important is that, not only what she said, but how she said it?
When she said it, as you could saw in that video, in the clip, there is no remorse in what Sarah Boone was saying. You took a human life, and what you are supposed to show is maybe some that, oh, I didn't want this to happen. I had no other choice but to take his life to prevent my own life being taken. That is not what happened here. It doesn't appear that the alleged victim in this case was any threat to her, especially inside of this. And to lock him in there basically when he's screaming to try to get out because he's suffocating, she does nothing. That is when the murder charge comes into play.
I do want to ask you, because the defense is self-defense, and of course they talked a lot about battered spouse syndrome. Can you detail what that is and what it's like in Florida to present that case?
In Florida, battered spouse, battered women syndrome is a defense that allows an individual to claim self-defense based on a defendant's previous understanding and history with the alleged victim in which they have done harm to them. It was famously done most recently down in, I believe it was the Fort Myers area, Port Charlotte area, where a woman was being repeatedly beaten by her husband. And on the day in question, she was being beat again, and she killed him in self-defense. The jury acquitted her of first-degree murder, and she was released. That is completely different than what we have here. There is no evidence that supports the fact that Sarah Boone was in imminent fear of her life at the time of the incident in question. And that is what is required for the affirmative defense. And she has done nothing taking the stand to meet any kind of burden she may have with this affirmative defense.
All right, I just wanted to ask you about that to get some clarification. I do also want to ask you about some of the evidence that was presented and some of the videos, because there's video of this tragic night there in this Winter Park home. And I do want to put up just some of this here on Live Now from Fox, and you can hear some cell phone video of it. How damaging, how detrimental could this video be for this case for Sarah Boone?
This is literally the silver bullet in her case. Her entire defense goes out the window. You're in so imminent fear of this individual harming you, you decide to take a video. No, you decided to take a video because you thought it was funny, and you're trying to basically like keep it as almost like evidence that you want to show that you're enjoying this. You're getting off thinking about this. And that is definitely what is going to be so detrimental to her case when it comes time for the jury deliberations, because this video shows you're not remorseful. You're not in imminent fear of your life. You are literally put somebody in the suitcase and laugh as they suffocate to death.
Yeah, and of course, like you said she thought it was funny, and she did not necessarily have to testify. She did not have to take the stand. Maybe what went into that decision in your mind for her to take the stand in this case?
Remember, in a criminal case, the defendant and the defendant alone has the right to take the stand or not take the stand. It is their decision. No attorney can prevent them, no judge. And her taking the stand tells me she wanted to tell her side of the story. She thought she could tell a jury a story that they would believe, that they would understand. It's like, I was in imminent fear of my life when I did this. And that's why I thought it was funny. That's why I locked him in there. That's why I took a video as he suffocated to death. Unfortunately, when a defendant takes the stand, those who think they can talk their way out of it rarely do.
All right, very, very good. Of course, 4 days of jury selection, 3 days of trial. The prosecution rested their case, the defense still going. What's the timeline in your eyes? How soon could the jury get this case, and how quickly might deliberations take?
I think the jury could get the case by tomorrow, and I think we could get a verdict tomorrow afternoon or Thursday morning, probably at the latest, depending on when jury instructions. But I think based on the timing of everything, closing arguments, I think Thursday is the most likely scenario. And I honestly don't believe it's going to take the jury very long.
All right, very interesting testimony today. Matt Tympanick, thank you so much for breaking it all down. This suitcase murder trial there taking place in Florida. We appreciate your time, your insight as always here on Live Now.